They say a parent's proudest moment is watching their child walk across that stage, diploma in hand, ready to take on the world. For 18 years you pour everything into them, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dream you set aside so they can chase theirs. And when that day finally comes, you want to be there, both of you, together. But what happens when the person who promised to stand beside you through it all simply doesn't show up? My name is Elena, and this is the story of how my daughter's graduation day became the catalyst for the biggest revelation of my life, a revelation that would shake my ex-husband to his core and change everything he thought he knew about power, control, and consequences. Let me take you back to that morning. June 15th. The sun was shining through our bedroom window. Well, my bedroom window now. It had been just mine for the past 3 years since Marcus moved out. The divorce was finalised 2 years ago. But the wounds? Those were still fresh, still raw, still bleeding every time I had to see his face at family events or hear our daughter, Sophie, talk about her weekend visits with him and her, Rebecca, his new wife, the woman he'd left me for when Sophie was just 15, the woman who was 10 years younger than me, with perfect skin, a perfect body, and apparently a perfect life with my ex-husband in their perfect downtown penthouse. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That morning I woke up with a mixture of excitement and dread twisting in my stomach. Sophie's high school graduation. Our baby girl was graduating as valedictorian. Full ride to Princeton, the whole world at her feet. I'd spent weeks planning every detail, the flowers, the restaurant reservation for after the ceremony, the surprise gift I'd been saving for. Everything had to be perfect for her. I picked up my phone and saw the text from Marcus, sent at 6:47 a.m. Running late with a work thing might not make the ceremony. Tell Sophie I'm proud of her. My hands started shaking. I read it again and again. Surely he wasn't serious. This was Sophie's graduation. The one day that wasn't about him, wasn't about me, wasn't about our failed marriage. This was about our daughter. I called him immediately. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I sent a text. Marcus, you cannot miss this. Sophie will be devastated. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, his response came through. I said I'm busy. She'll understand. She'll understand? Our daughter, who spent 3 years watching her father prioritize his new wife over her? Our daughter, who cried herself to sleep the night she found out about the affair? Our daughter, who stopped calling him Dad and started calling him Marcus because she said he hadn't earned that title anymore? No, she wouldn't understand, but she would pretend to because that's what Sophie did. She pretended everything was fine, wore that brave smile, and carried the weight of our broken family on her shoulders while maintaining a 4.0 GPA and leading 3 different clubs at school. I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my pajamas, and I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't the usual sadness or anger or frustration. It was something colder, sharper. It was the moment I realized that Marcus had always been this way, selfish, self-centered, completely oblivious to the damage he caused. And more importantly, I realized that I had spent 20 years making excuses for him, not anymore. I got up, showered, and put on the navy blue dress I'd bought specifically for this occasion. I did my makeup carefully, taking my time. I looked at myself in the mirror, 43 years old, silver streaks starting to show in my dark hair, fine lines around my eyes. I looked tired. I looked worn down. But today I decided I would look proud, because even if Marcus couldn't be bothered to show up, I would be there. I would be enough. When I went downstairs, Sophie was already in the kitchen, her graduation gown hanging on the back of a chair. She was eating toast and scrolling through her phone, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Morning, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice light and cheerful. She looked up and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Morning, Mom. You look beautiful." "Not as beautiful as you're going to look in about 2 hours." I poured myself coffee and sat across from her. "How are you feeling? Nervous about your speech?" "A little," she admitted. She set down her phone and looked at me with those intelligent brown eyes, Marcus's eyes, though I hated to admit it. "Mum, is Dad coming?" My heart broke. She already knew. She always knew. "He said he might be running late," I said carefully, "but I'm sure he'll—" "It's okay," she interrupted, her voice flat. "I figured. He's been weird about today anyway. Probably because Rebecca doesn't like coming to events where you'll be there." The casual way she said it, like it was just a fact of life, like it was normal, made me want to scream, but I kept my composure. "Sophie, today is about you, just you, and I promise you, I will be in that audience cheering louder than everyone else combined." She smiled again, and this time it was real. "I know you will, Mom. You always are." We finished breakfast and drove to the school together. The parking lot was already filling up with families, all dressed up, carrying flowers and balloons and signs with their graduates' names on them. I saw Sophie's friends gathering by the entrance, taking pictures, laughing, hugging. They looked so young and so old at the same time. I helped Sophie with her cap and gown, straightened her honour cords, and took about 100 pictures. She tolerated my fussing with good humour, and when I finally let her go join her friends, she hugged me tight. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered, "for everything." "Always, baby. Now go. Make us proud." I watched her walk away, and I felt tears sting my eyes, but I wouldn't cry, not yet. I had to stay strong for her. I found my seat in the auditorium, front row, where I'd been camped out since they opened the doors an hour early. I'd saved the seat next to me for Marcus, though with every passing minute I became more convinced he wasn't coming. The ceremony started at 10 o'clock. Parents filed in, the seats filled up, the energy in the room built to an excited hum. The seat next to me remained empty. I checked my phone. No new messages. The principal took the stage. The national anthem played. Students were called up one by one to receive their diplomas. I applauded for each one, but my eyes kept darting to the empty seat beside me and then to the entrance, hoping, stupidly, desperately hoping, that Marcus would walk through those doors. He didn't. When they called Sophie Martinez to the stage as valedictorian, I stood up and cheered so loudly that people around me laughed. She looked right at me as she crossed that stage, diploma in hand, and I saw tears in her eyes. Happy tears, I told myself, just happy tears. But after the ceremony, when families were taking pictures outside and Marcus still hadn't shown up, when Sophie kept checking her phone and forcing smiles for the camera, I knew they weren't just happy tears. And that's when I made a decision. A decision that had been building for 3 years, maybe longer. Marcus thought he could do whatever he wanted without consequences. He thought leaving me was the end of the story. He thought he'd moved on to bigger and better things. He had no idea that the real story was just beginning. After the ceremony, we went to Bella Vista, the Italian restaurant I'd reserved weeks ago. It was Sophie's favourite place, the kind with white tablecloths and candles, and that garlic bread she'd loved since she was 6 years old. I'd made a reservation for 3, hoping against hope that Marcus would at least show up for the lunch. He didn't. It was just Sophie and me at that table meant for 3, that empty chair sitting between us like a ghost. I'd moved the extra place setting aside, but we both knew it was there. We both knew who was missing. Mum, you don't have to keep checking your phone, Sophie said gently as we looked over the menus. He's not coming. I know, sweetheart, I just thought maybe he made his choice. Her voice was steady, but I heard the hurt underneath it. He's been making that choice for 3 years now. I reached across the table and took her hand. I'm so sorry, Sophie. Why are you apologizing? You're the one who showed up. You always show up. She squeezed my hand. Can we just have a nice lunch? Just us? And pretend today was perfect? So, that's what we did. We ordered too much food, her favourite pasta, calamari, that tiramisu she always got. And we talked about Princeton, about her plans for the future, about anything except the person who should have been there. I gave her my gift, a silver necklace with a compass charm that had been my grandmother's. So you always find your way home, I told her. She cried when she opened it. Real tears this time, the kind that come from love instead of disappointment. We were finishing dessert when my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Sorry I missed it. Something came up. Can I take Sophie to dinner tomorrow to celebrate? I showed Sophie the message. She read it, her jaw tightening, and then handed the phone back to me. Tell him I'm busy, she said flatly. Sophie, you don't have to... Mom, I'm done making excuses for him. I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt when he chooses everything else over me. Tell him I'm busy, I typed back. She's busy. Maybe try planning ahead next time instead of treating your daughter like an afterthought. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. We drove home in comfortable silence. When we pulled into the driveway, Sophie turned to me with a curious expression. Mum, can I ask you something? Anything? Do you ever regret it, staying with him as long as you did, believing him when he said he'd change? I thought about that question, really thought about it. Did I regret it? The 20 years I'd given him, the dreams I'd deferred, the career I'd put on hold to raise Sophie while he built his business empire? I don't regret it, I said finally, because it gave me you. But I do regret not standing up for myself sooner. I regret teaching you, by example, that it was okay for someone to treat me the way he did. She nodded slowly. Well, for what it's worth, I think you're incredible, and I think he's an idiot for not seeing that. I laughed, actually laughed for the first time all day. Thank you, baby. That means everything. That night, after Sophie went to bed, I sat in my home office with a glass of wine and finally let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The anger, the hurt, the crushing disappointment. I'd known Marcus was selfish, but I'd convinced myself that when it came to Sophie, he'd be different, that his love for his daughter would override everything else. I'd been wrong. I opened my laptop and logged into my email, scrolling through messages without really seeing them. I was about to close it when I noticed an email from 3 weeks ago that I'd missed. It was from Catherine Reeves. Catherine. I hadn't thought about her in months. She was an old colleague from before Sophie was born, back when I'd worked in commercial real estate development. We'd stayed loosely in touch over the years, mostly through LinkedIn and the occasional coffee meetup, but I hadn't heard from her in a while. The subject line read, "Opportunity you might be interested in." I almost deleted it. I got a lot of those kinds of emails, but something made me click it open instead. "Elena," it read, "I hope this email finds you well. I've been following your career, or lack thereof, thanks to that husband of yours, ex-husband. I'm reaching out because I've recently partnered with a group of investors on a major development project downtown, the Meridian Tower. We're looking for someone with your expertise to consult on the project. I know you've been out of the game for a while, but I remember how brilliant you were. If you're interested, let's talk. The pay is excellent, and honestly, I think you'd be perfect for this. Let me know. Catherine, the Meridian Tower." I'd heard about it, everyone had. It was the biggest development project the city had seen in decades. Prime downtown location, mixed-use luxury building, projected to reshape the entire skyline. It was exactly the kind of project I used to dream about working on. Before Marcus convinced me that being a stay-at-home mom was better for the family, before I gave up my career to support his, before I became invisible. I read the email again, then I checked the date on it. 3 weeks ago. She'd probably already found someone else by now, but something inside me, that cold, sharp thing that had awakened that morning, made me hit reply anyway. "Catherine," I typed, "I apologise for the delayed response. I'm very interested in discussing this opportunity. Are you available to meet this week? Eleanor." I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Then I poured another glass of wine and opened a second browser tab. I typed Meridian Tower Development into the search bar and started reading. Article after article about the project, the investors, the architectural plans. I devoured every piece of information I could find. And that's when I saw it, buried in an article from 2 months ago about the project's financing. Martinez and Associates has secured the contract for legal and financial consulting on the project, with Marcus Martinez personally overseeing the account. Marcus, my ex-husband, was working on the Meridian Tower. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. Catherine had emailed me about consulting on a project that Marcus was also working on. Did she know? Had she done this on purpose? Or was this just a cosmic coincidence? I kept reading. The more I learned about the project, the more fascinating it became. But also the more complicated. There were mentions of zoning disputes, neighbourhood opposition, environmental concerns. The project had been delayed twice already. It was a powder keg of potential problems. And Marcus was right in the middle of it. My phone buzzed. An email notification. Catherine had already responded. "Elena, so glad to hear from you. Yes, let's meet. Are you free Thursday morning? I'll send you the address. Looking forward to catching up." Thursday, that was in 2 days. I confirmed the meeting, then closed my laptop and sat in the quiet darkness of my office. For the first time in 3 years, maybe longer, I felt something other than sadness or anger or resignation. I felt possibility. I felt power. And I felt ready to reclaim the part of myself I'd lost. Thursday morning arrived faster than I expected. I woke up with a strange mixture of nerves and excitement that reminded me of my first day at my old job, back when I was 25 and fearless and convinced I could do anything. I spent extra time getting ready, not the way I used to get ready for Marcus, trying to be perfect, trying to be what he wanted. This was different. I dressed for myself. A sharp black pantsuit that I'd bought during the divorce proceedings but never had occasion to wear. Simple jewellery, hair pulled back in a professional bun, minimal makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I barely recognised, someone who looked capable, confident, ready for business. Sophie was still asleep when I left. I'd written her a note on the kitchen counter. "Job meeting, back this afternoon. Love you, so proud of you, Mom." The address Catherine had sent me was downtown, in one of those glass office buildings that always made me feel small when I was younger. Now, walking through the revolving doors into the marble lobby, I didn't feel small at all. I felt like I belonged. Catherine's office was on the 23rd floor. Her assistant greeted me with a warm smile and offered coffee, which I accepted. While I waited, I looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city spread out below. Somewhere down there was Marcus's office. Somewhere down there was the life he'd built without me. "Elena!" I turned to see Catherine striding toward me, hand extended, smile genuine. She looked exactly as I remembered, tall, commanding presence, silver hair cut in a sharp bob, tailored suit that screamed success. We'd been peers once, but she'd clearly continued climbing while I'd stopped. "Catherine, it's so good to see you." "You look fantastic," she said, and I could tell she meant it. "Come on, let's talk in my office." Her office was impressive, corner view, modern furniture, walls lined with photos from various development projects. She gestured for me to sit on the leather couch while she took the chair across from me. "So," she began, "I'm going to be direct because that's who I am, and I think you appreciate that about me. I heard about your divorce, I heard Marcus left you for someone younger, and I heard you basically disappeared from the industry." I nodded, unsure where this was going. "Here's what I also heard," she continued. "I heard that you were one of the sharpest minds in commercial development before you stepped back. I heard that the Harrison Plaza project, you remember that one, succeeded specifically because of your work on the zoning and community relations. And I heard that you gave up all of that to support Marcus's career and raise your daughter." "That's true," I said quietly. "Well, I think that was a waste of your talent, and I'd like to help you reclaim it." She leaned forward, her eyes intense and focused. "The Meridian Tower is the biggest project I've ever been involved with, Elena. It's also the most complicated. We've got neighbourhood groups fighting us, environmental concerns, zoning nightmares, and a dozen different stakeholders who all want different things. We need someone who can navigate all of that, someone who understands the technical side but also knows how to talk to people, build consensus, find creative solutions." "And you think that's me?" I asked, trying to keep the disbelief out of my voice. "I know it is. I've already talked to the other partners about you. They've reviewed your old work. They're impressed. We want to bring you on as a senior consultant, full-time, if you're interested. The pay is competitive, very competitive. And honestly, Elena, I think this could be your comeback." My heart was racing. This was everything I'd dreamed about back when I still let myself dream. But there was one piece of information I needed to address. "Catherine, I saw in one of the articles that Martinez and Associates is working on this project. Marcus is involved." She didn't look surprised. "Yes, he is. He's handling the financial and legal consulting side. You'd be working on development, zoning, and community relations. Your paths might cross occasionally, but you wouldn't be working directly together." "Does he know you contacted me?" "No." She smiled slightly. "And honestly, that's part of why I wanted you. Marcus has been difficult on this project. He thinks he runs everything, questions every decision, constantly tries to override the rest of the team. Having someone with your expertise who also happens to know exactly how he operates, that could be invaluable." I sat back, processing this, working on the same project as Marcus, seeing him in professional settings, but this time, not as his wife in the background, not as his ex-wife he'd discarded, as his equal, as his colleague, as someone he'd have to respect, whether he wanted to or not. "When would you need me to start?" I asked. Catherine's smile widened. "Is Monday too soon?" I laughed, actually laughed, and felt something loosen in my chest. "Monday is perfect." We spent the next 2 hours going over the details of the project, my role, the compensation package. It was generous, more than generous. It was the kind of salary I'd been earning before I stopped working, adjusted for the years of experience I should have accumulated if I'd kept working. Catherine was giving me back not just a job, but my entire career trajectory. As I was leaving, she walked me to the elevator. "Eleanor," she said, "I want you to know something. I'm not doing this as charity, and I'm not doing it to get back at Marcus. I'm doing this because you're legitimately the best person for this job. But if, in the process of you doing excellent work, Marcus realizes what an idiot he was for not seeing your value, well, I won't complain about that." I smiled. "Neither will I. On the drive home, I felt lighter than I had in years. I called Sophie immediately. "Mum," she answered, sounding groggy, "it's not even noon yet." "I got a job," I blurted out. "A real job. An incredible job. Senior consultant on a major development project downtown. I start Monday." There was silence for a moment. Then Sophie squealed so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "Mom, that's amazing! Oh my God, I'm so proud of you." "I'm proud of me too," I admitted. "Sophie, I haven't felt this excited about anything in so long. You deserve this. You deserve all of it. We're celebrating tonight. I'm taking you to dinner. You don't have to—" "I'm taking you to dinner," she repeated firmly. "My treat. Well, your treat since you're paying for Princeton, but I'm buying the appetizers." I laughed. Deal. That afternoon, I started preparing for Monday. I dug out my old portfolio from the storage unit. Project plans, presentations, letters of recommendation from before Sophie was born. I reviewed everything, reminding myself of who I'd been, what I'd accomplished. I ordered new business cards online. I updated my LinkedIn profile for the first time in 15 years. And somewhere in the middle of all that preparation, I realized something. I'd spent 3 years thinking my life had ended when Marcus left. I'd spent 3 years believing that my value was tied to being his wife, Sophie's mother, someone defined by her relationships to other people. But I'd been wrong. My life hadn't ended. It had just been on pause, and now I was pressing play again. That evening, Sophie and I went to a nice steakhouse downtown. She wore a dress she'd bought for graduation events, and I wore the outfit I'd worn to meet Catherine. We must have looked like two businesswomen celebrating a deal, which, in a way, we were. "To new beginnings," Sophie said, raising her glass of water since she wasn't 21 yet. "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my wine glass against hers. We talked for hours. About her plans for Princeton, about my new job, about the future. It felt like the first conversation we'd had in years where Marcus wasn't a dark cloud hanging over everything. He was irrelevant now, just a footnote in our story. As we were finishing dessert, Sophie looked at me with a mischievous expression. "Mum, you know what's going to be hilarious." "What?" "When Marcus finds out you're working on his project, when he has to see you in meetings and acknowledge that you're actually really good at what you do, when he can't ignore you or dismiss you or pretend you don't exist." I smiled. "I'm not doing this for revenge, Sophie." "I know you're not," she said. "But that doesn't mean it won't be satisfying anyway." She was right, of course. It would be satisfying. But more than that, it would be validating. After 20 years of being told, subtly and not so subtly, that my career didn't matter as much as his, that my dreams could wait, that my role was to support rather than achieve, I was about to prove everyone wrong, including myself. Monday morning came too quickly and not quickly enough. I woke up at 5 a.m., too excited and nervous to sleep. I went through my morning routine with meticulous care. Shower, coffee, the right outfit, professional but not trying too hard, natural makeup, hair styled but not overdone. Every choice felt important, like I was building armour for battle. Sophie was up before I left, which surprised me. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked as she stumbled into the kitchen. "Wanted to see you off on your first day," she said through a yawn, "like you always did for me." My heart melted. "Thank you, sweetheart. You're going to be amazing, Mom. They're lucky to have you." I hugged her tight, trying not to cry and mess up my makeup. "I love you so much." "Love you too. Now go show them what you're made of." The drive downtown felt surreal. For so many years this had been Marcus's world. The office buildings, the business meetings, the important work. I'd dropped him off at his office 1,000 times, always the driver, never the destination. Now I was parking in the underground garage of the Meridian Tower project headquarters, riding the elevator up to the 15th floor, walking through glass doors that read Meridian Development Group in sleek silver letters. The receptionist greeted me warmly. "You must be Elena Martinez. We've been expecting you. Catherine asked me to show you to your office." My office. Those words sent a thrill through me. It wasn't huge, but it was mine. A desk by the window with a view of the city, a bookshelf waiting to be filled, a whiteboard for ideas, plants that someone had thoughtfully placed to make it feel welcoming. My name was already on the door, Elena Martinez, Senior Development Consultant. I stood there for a moment, just taking it in. This was real. This was happening. "Elena," Catherine appeared in the doorway, already dressed for battle in a sharp grey suit. "Welcome to the team. How does it feel?" "Terrifying and amazing," I admitted. "Good. That means you care." She checked her watch. "We have a team meeting in 20 minutes. I'll introduce you to everyone, give you the overview of where we are with the project. Then we'll get you up to speed on the specific issues we need your expertise on." The next few hours were a whirlwind. The team meeting included architects, engineers, community relations specialists, financial analysts, about 20 people total. Catherine introduced me with glowing praise that made me both proud and self-conscious. Everyone was welcoming, asking questions about my background, seeming genuinely excited to have me on board. What I noticed was that Marcus wasn't there. "He usually comes to these meetings," Catherine explained afterward when I casually mentioned it. "But he's been selective about which ones he attends lately. Don't worry. You'll meet him soon enough." Part of me was relieved. Part of me wanted to get it over with. Catherine spent the rest of the morning walking me through the project details. The Meridian Tower was even more complex than I'd realised. The building itself was stunning, 52 floors of luxury residential, high-end retail and office space. But the complications were numerous. The site required environmental remediation. The zoning had been challenged multiple times. 3 neighbourhood associations were opposed to the project, and there were concerns about traffic and infrastructure. "This is where you come in," Catherine explained, showing me maps and reports. "We need someone who can work with the neighbourhood groups, address their concerns, find compromises that satisfy everyone, or at least enough people that we can move forward." The previous consultant couldn't hack it. Too aggressive, didn't listen, made promises we couldn't keep. We need someone with finesse. "I can do that," I said, and I meant it. Community relations had always been my strength. Listening to concerns, finding creative solutions, building trust. It was the work I'd loved most before I stopped working. "I know you can," Catherine said. "That's why you're here." Over the next few days, I threw myself into the work with an intensity I'd forgotten I possessed. I read through every document, every report, every piece of community feedback. I attended neighbourhood meetings in the evenings, listening to residents voice their concerns. I took notes, asked questions, began forming ideas about how to address the issues, and I managed to avoid Marcus entirely until Thursday. I was in the conference room preparing for a meeting with one of the architectural firms when I heard his voice in the hallway. That voice I'd known for 20 years, the one that used to make my heart race when we were young, the one that had said, "I love you," and "I want a divorce," with equal conviction. I froze, papers in hand, as he walked into the conference room. Marcus looked exactly the same. Tall, still handsome at 46. That salt and pepper hair he was so vain about. Designer suit, expensive watch, the kind of confident posture that came from never being told no. He was looking at his phone, not paying attention to who else was in the room, until he looked up. His eyes met mine, and I watched the shock register on his face. His mouth actually dropped open for a second before he caught himself. "Elena, he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. "What are you doing here?" I straightened my spine and met his gaze evenly. "Working. I'm the new senior development consultant on the project." "Since when?" "Since Monday." I kept my voice professional, neutral. "I'm handling community relations and zoning issues." He processed this for a moment, and I could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. Confusion, annoyance, something else I couldn't quite identify. "I didn't know you were looking for work," he said finally. "There's a lot you don't know about me anymore, Marcus. That tends to happen after a divorce." He flinched at that, which gave me a small surge of satisfaction. Before he could respond, Catherine walked in with 2 other colleagues. "Oh, good, you've met Eleanor," Catherine said cheerfully. "Marcus, Elena's going to be handling the community side of things. I've already briefed her on where we stand with the neighbourhood associations. She has some excellent ideas about how to move forward." "I'm sure she does," Marcus said, but his tone suggested the opposite. The meeting proceeded, but I could feel his eyes on me the entire time. Every time I spoke, every time I presented an idea, I felt him watching, judging, waiting for me to fail. But I didn't fail. I'd prepared thoroughly, knew the material inside and out, and my suggestions were solid. Even Marcus couldn't find fault with them, though I could tell he wanted to. "Well," Catherine said as the meeting wrapped up, "I think we have a good path forward. Elena, excellent work. Marcus, I'll need those financial projections by next week." He nodded curtly and left without another word to me. Catherine waited until he was gone, then turned to me with a knowing smile. "That went well." "He hates this," I said. "Of course he does. You're good at your job, you're professional, and you're making him look bad by comparison." She patted my shoulder. "Keep up the excellent work." Over the next 2 weeks, I settled into a routine. I loved the work, genuinely loved it in a way I hadn't expected. Every morning I woke up excited to dive into a new challenge. I met with community groups, drafted compromise proposals, coordinated with the architects and engineers. I was contributing something real, something valuable, and Marcus hated every second of it. I saw him regularly now, in meetings, in the hallways, sometimes in the elevator. He was always coldly professional, never acknowledging our history, treating me like any other colleague, which was fine. That's exactly how I wanted to be treated. But I noticed things. The way he'd tense up when I presented ideas that were better than his. The way he'd try to poke holes in my proposals, only to be shut down by Catherine or other team members. The way he'd leave meetings early when I was speaking. He wasn't used to me being his equal. He wasn't used to me being seen as competent, valuable, important. And he definitely wasn't used to being overshadowed by me. One afternoon I was working late in my office when there was a knock on my door. I looked up to find Marcus standing there, and for the first time since that initial meeting, we were alone. "Can I come in?" he asked. "It's not locked," I replied, keeping my attention on my computer screen. He entered and closed the door behind him. He didn't sit down, just stood awkwardly near my desk. "This is weird," he said finally. "What is?" "You being here, working on my project." I looked up at him then, eyebrows raised. "Your project? You know what I mean. Actually, I don't. This is a project with dozens of stakeholders and team members. It's not yours any more than it's mine." I leaned back in my chair. "Was there something specific you needed, Marcus? Because I have work to finish." He shifted uncomfortably. I didn't expect to see you here, in this world. I thought you'd moved on to, I don't know, other things." "Other things?" I repeated. "You mean like sitting at home being sad about our divorce?" "Sorry to disappoint you, but I have an actual life, an actual career. Turns out I'm pretty good at this." I never said you weren't. You didn't have to say it. You showed it. Every time you dismissed my career as less important than yours, every time you convinced me to put my work aside for the family, every time you made me feel like I was nothing more than your wife and Sophie's mother. I stood up, facing him across the desk. But you were wrong. I'm more than that. I've always been more than that. You just couldn't see it. He looked like I'd slapped him. Elena, We're not doing this, I interrupted. We're not having this conversation. We're colleagues now, Marcus, that's it. So unless you have something work-related to discuss, I need you to leave my office. For a moment I thought he was going to argue. But then he nodded stiffly and turned toward the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. For what it's worth, he said without turning around, you were always good at this. I never told you that enough. Then he left, closing the door quietly behind him. I sat down, my hands shaking slightly. That conversation had taken more out of me than I'd expected, but I'd stood my ground. I'd been strong. I hadn't let him make me feel small or insignificant. I looked at the work spread across my desk. Proposals, community feedback reports, zoning maps. This was mine. This success was mine, and no one, not even Marcus, could take that away from me. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. How's work going? Kick any butt today? I smiled and typed back. Always love you. Love you too, Mom. You're a badass. Yes, I thought. Maybe I am. 3 weeks into my new position, I was finally hitting my stride. The community relations work was progressing better than anyone had expected. I'd managed to turn around 2 of the 3 opposing neighbourhood associations by listening to their concerns and incorporating several of their suggestions into the project design. Things like additional green space, better traffic flow solutions, and a commitment to include affordable housing units in the building. Catherine was thrilled. The other team members were impressed. Even the architects admitted my suggestions improved the overall design. But something was bothering me. It started small, little inconsistencies in the financial reports that Marcus's firm provided, numbers that didn't quite add up, projections that seemed overly optimistic. Cost estimates that felt low compared to similar projects I'd worked on years ago. At first I dismissed it. I wasn't a financial expert, and Marcus's firm had a solid reputation. Maybe I was just rusty on the financial side of things. Maybe construction costs had changed in ways I wasn't aware of. But the feeling wouldn't go away. One evening I was working late again, something I'd been doing a lot since starting this job. Sophie was at a friend's house studying for her Princeton placement tests, so I had the time. I was reviewing the latest budget projections when I noticed something odd. There was a line item for environmental remediation that seemed significantly lower than it should be. The site had been an old manufacturing plant, which meant potential soil contamination, groundwater issues, possible asbestos in any remaining structures. Remediation for a site that size should cost millions, but the budget showed only a fraction of that amount. I pulled up my old files from similar projects. The costs weren't even in the same ballpark. Frowning, I started digging deeper. I cross-referenced the environmental reports with the budget. I looked at the contractor bids. I examined the timeline for remediation work, and that's when I found it. The environmental report that Martinez and Associates had submitted to the team was dated 6 months ago, but when I checked the county records online, public information that anyone could access, I found a more recent report filed just 2 months ago. A report that showed significantly worse contamination than the one Marcus's firm had provided to us. My heart started pounding. I compared the 2 reports side by side. They were dramatically different. The older report, the one Marcus had given us, showed minimal contamination, easily manageable remediation, low cost. The newer report showed extensive contamination, complex remediation requirements, costs that would be at least triple what was budgeted? Why would Marcus provide an outdated report? Why wouldn't he update the team with the new information, unless he didn't want anyone to know? I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. If the real remediation costs were as high as the new report suggested, it would significantly impact the project's budget. It might even make the project financially unviable at the current projections. Investors would need to know, the team would need to redo all the financial models. But if no one knew about the increased costs, if Marcus had buried the new report and kept everyone working off the old numbers, then what? I needed to be sure before I said anything. I couldn't accuse Marcus of hiding information without being absolutely certain. Over the next few days, I investigated quietly. I requested additional environmental documentation through proper channels, claiming I needed it for the community relations work, which was technically true. I spoke with the environmental consultants directly, asking detailed questions about their findings. I reviewed every piece of paperwork I could get my hands on, and with each new piece of information, the picture became clearer and more disturbing. Marcus had definitely received the updated environmental report. There were emails proving it. But he'd never shared it with the team. More than that, he'd actively downplayed the environmental concerns when they came up in meetings. He'd assured everyone that remediation was on track and within budget, when he knew, he had to know, that neither was true. But why? What did he have to gain from hiding this information? I found the answer late one night, cross-referencing business records and LLC filings. Marcus didn't just work for the Meridian Tower project, he had a financial stake in it. His firm had invested significantly in the development. If the environmental costs exploded and the project's profitability was threatened, his firm would lose millions. He was protecting his investment by hiding the truth from everyone else. It was fraud, or close enough that it didn't matter what you called it. He was deceiving the other investors, the development team, potentially even the regulatory agencies. And when the truth came out, because it would come out eventually, the whole project could collapse. People could lose their jobs. Investors could lose money. The entire development could be shut down. And I was the one who discovered it. I sat in my office at midnight staring at the evidence spread across my desk. Part of me wanted to pretend I'd never seen it. To let Marcus dig his own grave. To stay out of it entirely, but I couldn't. This project wasn't just about Marcus, it was about Catherine, who'd given me this opportunity. It was about the other consultants and architects and engineers who were all working in good faith. It was about doing the right thing, even when the right thing was hard. Especially when it involved my ex-husband. I gathered all the documentation, organised it into a clear, irrefutable presentation, and scheduled a meeting with Catherine for first thing Monday morning. That weekend was torture. I couldn't tell Sophie what I'd found, not yet, not until I'd reported it to Catherine. But Sophie could tell something was bothering me. "Mum, are you okay?" she asked on Saturday morning, when she found me staring at my coffee instead of drinking it. "Just thinking about work," I said, which was true. "Is Marcus being a jerk?" "Not exactly," I sighed. "Sophie, if you knew someone was doing something wrong, something that could hurt a lot of people, would you report it, even if it meant that person would get in serious trouble?" She looked at me seriously. "Is this about Marcus?" "I can't say yet. I need to know what you think." "Mum, you've spent my entire life teaching me to do the right thing, even when it's hard. You've taught me to stand up for what's right, to have integrity, to not look the other way when people are being hurt." She took my hand. "Whatever you're dealing with, I know you'll do the right thing. You always do." Her faith in me was both comforting and terrifying. Monday morning, I arrived at the office an hour early. I reviewed my documentation one more time, making sure everything was in order, that I hadn't missed anything or jumped to conclusions. It was all there. Undeniable. Damning. At 8 a.m. sharp, I knocked on Catherine's door. "Elena," she greeted me with a smile. "You're here early. Everything okay?" "We need to talk," I said. "It's important. And it's not good." Her smile faded. Come in. Close the door." I spent the next 45 minutes walking her through everything I'd found. I showed her the 2 different environmental reports, the emails proving Marcus had received the updated one, the budget discrepancies, the timeline of when he'd received the information versus when he'd continued to present the old numbers to the team. Catherine's expression grew darker with each piece of evidence I presented. "This is serious," she said finally. "Elena, you understand what you're saying. You're accusing Marcus of deliberately deceiving the entire project team." "I know, and I have proof." I pushed the folder across her desk. "It's all documented. Everything." She looked through the materials, her jaw tight. When she finished, she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Why are you bringing this to me?" she asked. "Marcus is your ex-husband. Most people would be happy to see him fail, to let him hang himself. Why didn't you just stay quiet?" "Because this isn't about me and Marcus," I said. "This is about the project, about the team, about doing what's right. If I stayed quiet and this all came out later, people could get hurt, the project could fail, and I'd be complicit in that failure." Catherine studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right. And you did the right thing bringing this to me." She stood up. "I need to take this to the other partners immediately. This is beyond my authority to handle alone. Can you make yourself available for a meeting this afternoon? We may need you to present your findings." "Of course. And Elena?" She met my eyes. "I know this can't be easy for you. Thank you for your integrity." The rest of the morning felt surreal. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting to what was happening in those closed-door meetings, what Catherine was telling the other partners, how Marcus would react when he found out. At 2 p.m. I was called into the main conference room. The entire executive team was there, Catherine and 4 other senior partners. I'd only met briefly. Marcus was not present. "Ms. Martinez," one of the partners began, an older man named Robert Thornton. "We've reviewed the materials you provided to Catherine. We've also done some additional investigation this morning. What you've uncovered is extremely serious." I nodded, my mouth dry. "We need to understand your process," another partner said, a woman named Diana Chen. "How did you discover this information? Were you specifically looking for problems with Marcus's work?" "No," I said firmly. "I was doing my job. I was reviewing budget projections for the community impact assessments I'm preparing. I noticed that the environmental remediation costs seemed unusually low for a site of this type. I've worked on similar projects before, and the numbers didn't make sense, so I started asking questions and cross-referencing public records. That's when I found the discrepancy between the reports." "And you didn't know about any of this before you took this job?" Robert asked. "Marcus hadn't mentioned any environmental issues?" "I haven't had any personal conversations with Marcus about the project," I said. "We barely speak outside of professional settings. Everything I discovered independently through public records and project documentation." They asked me more questions, detailed, specific questions about my timeline of discovery, my methodology, my certainty about the facts. I answered each one clearly and thoroughly. I wasn't going to let them dismiss this as some kind of revenge plot or personal vendetta. Finally, Catherine spoke up. "I think it's clear that Eleanor has conducted herself professionally and ethically throughout this process. She could have stayed quiet. She could have let this blow up in Marcus's face later. Instead, she brought it to our attention immediately so we could address it before it caused catastrophic damage to the project. "Agreed," Robert said. "Ms. Martinez, thank you for your diligence. We'll take it from here. We'll need to conduct a full investigation, of course, but based on what we've seen so far, this is extremely concerning. You may be called upon to provide additional testimony or documentation as we proceed." "I understand," I said. "One more thing," Diana added. "What you've shared with us is confidential. We need you to not discuss this with anyone, including Marcus, until our investigation is complete. Can you do that?" "Yes." As I left the conference room, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. I'd done the right thing, I knew that, but I also knew that when Marcus found out I was the one who'd exposed him, there would be consequences. I just didn't know yet how severe they would be. The investigation took 3 days. 3 days of Catherine and the partners conducting interviews, reviewing documents, bringing in external auditors and legal counsel. 3 days of walking around the office knowing that at any moment everything could explode. 3 days of Marcus looking increasingly agitated in meetings, clearly sensing that something was wrong but not yet knowing what. I kept my head down and focused on my work. The community relations projects were going well. I had meetings scheduled with the final holdout neighbourhood association. I was preparing a comprehensive proposal that I believed could finally get them on board. But underneath all of that, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. It happened on Thursday afternoon. I was in my office reviewing blueprints when I heard shouting in the hallway. Marcus's voice loud and angry, then Catherine's voice measured but firm. "You need to calm down, Marcus." "Calm down? You're accusing me of fraud. You're suspending me from the project, and you won't even tell me who made these accusations." "The source of the information is irrelevant. What matters is that the information is accurate and that you failed to disclose material facts to the team and the investors." "This is absurd. I've done nothing wrong." Their voices were getting closer to my office. I stood up from my desk, unsure what to do. Should I close my door? Should I go out there? Should I... Marcus appeared in my doorway, his face flushed with anger. Catherine was right behind him. "It was you," he said, his voice deadly quiet now. "You did this." I met his gaze steadily. "I reported information that I discovered in the course of doing my job. Information that you should have disclosed to the team yourself." "You vindictive!" He stepped into my office and Catherine immediately moved between us. "Marcus, you need to leave. Now." "She's lying," he shouted, though his anger seemed more desperate now than righteous. "She's making things up because she's angry about the divorce." "I'm not lying," I said calmly. "Everything I reported is documented. Public records, emails that you sent, reports that you received and chose not to share. If you did nothing wrong, the investigation will clear you." "This is about revenge," he insisted. "This is about getting back at me for leaving you." "Actually, Marcus, this is about you committing fraud." I kept my voice level, professional. "You hid material information from the investors and the development team. You continued to present outdated data that you knew was inaccurate. You put this entire project at risk to protect your own financial interests." "You can't prove that." "I already did. That's why you're being suspended." Catherine took Marcus's arm. "That's enough. Marcus, you need to leave the building. You're suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. Your credentials have been revoked. Security will escort you out." "You're going to regret this," Marcus said, looking at me. "Both of you." "The only person who should have regrets here is you," Catherine replied. "Now let's go." She guided him out of my office. I could hear them walking down the hallway, Marcus still protesting, Catherine remaining firm. Then I heard the elevator ding, and then there was silence. I sat down heavily in my chair, my hands shaking. That had been worse than I'd expected. The anger in his eyes, the accusations, the threats, but I'd stood my ground. I'd told the truth, and I'd done it without losing my composure. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. "I heard there was drama at your office. You okay?" Word travelled fast. "I'm fine. We'll explain tonight. Love you." "Love you too. I'm proud of you." Catherine returned to my office a few minutes later. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that," she said. "He had no right to confront you like that." "It's okay. I expected him to react badly." "Well, for what it's worth, the investigation has concluded. We have enough evidence to terminate Marcus's firm's contract with the project. We're also reporting his conduct to the relevant regulatory bodies. What he did wasn't just unethical, it was potentially criminal. I absorbed that." What happens to the project now? We move forward, we bring in a new financial consulting firm, we update all the projections with the accurate environmental costs. We probably have to go back to the investors and ask for additional funding, which won't be fun, but it's better than the alternative. She sat down across from me. "Elena, if you hadn't caught this when you did, if we'd gotten further into construction and then discovered the real remediation costs, it could have bankrupted the project. You saved this development. I was just doing my job. No, you went above and beyond. And you did it even though you knew it would cause you personal problems with your ex-husband." She smiled. "That takes real courage." After Catherine left, I tried to go back to work, but I couldn't concentrate. Instead, I found myself thinking about Marcus, about the man I'd married 20 years ago, about the slow erosion of trust and respect that had led to the divorce, about how he'd dismissed my career, my intelligence, my worth, and about how, in the end, I'd been the one to see through his deceptions while he'd underestimated me completely. There was a strange satisfaction in that. Not revenge exactly, more like validation, proof that I'd always been smarter and more capable than he'd given me credit for, proof that leaving me had been his loss, not mine. That evening I told Sophie everything. We sat in the living room with tea, and I walked her through the whole story, finding the discrepancies, conducting the investigation, reporting to Catherine, the confrontation with Marcus. Sophie listened with wide eyes, and when I finished, she let out a low whistle. "Mom, that's insane. Dad committed fraud." "It looks that way. The investigation is still ongoing, but the evidence is pretty clear. And you're the one who caught him." "I'm the one who noticed something was wrong and followed up on it, yes." She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she said, "Does he know that you're the reason he got caught?" "Yes. He confronted me today. He thinks I did it for revenge." "Did you?" I considered that question carefully. No. If I'd wanted revenge, I would have let him hang himself. This would have come out eventually, and it would have been so much worse for him. I reported it because it was the right thing to do. Because other people would have been hurt if I stayed quiet. Sophie nodded slowly. "You know what's wild? Dad always acted like you were less than him, like your career didn't matter, like you weren't as smart or important. And now you're the one who outsmarted him. You're the one who caught him doing something illegal." "I don't know if I'd say I outsmarted him." "Mum, yes, you did. He thought he was so clever, hiding that report, protecting his investment. And you saw right through it. You did the detective work. You built the case. You took him down." She grinned. "That's pretty badass." I laughed despite myself. "I suppose it is." "So what happens now to him, I mean?" "I'm not sure. The firm will terminate his contract. There might be legal consequences, fraud charges, regulatory violations. At minimum, His reputation is going to take a serious hit. Other clients might start questioning his work. Good, Sophie said firmly. He deserves it. Sophie! Mum, I know you're trying to be fair and objective, but he lied to people, he broke the law. And honestly, after everything he's put us through, leaving you, missing my graduation, treating us like we don't matter, it's kind of satisfying to see him face some actual consequences for once. She was right, of course. It was satisfying. Not in a vindictive way, but in a justice being served way. Marcus had spent years acting like rules didn't apply to him, like he could do whatever he wanted without repercussions. Finally, he was learning otherwise. Over the next few days, the news spread through the industry. Marcus's firm had been fired from the Meridian Tower project. There were rumours of fraud, of hidden environmental costs, of a whistleblower who'd exposed the whole thing. I didn't confirm or deny anything when people asked me about it. I kept my head down and focused on my work. But I noticed how people looked at me differently now, with respect, with admiration even. The woman who'd caught the fraud, the woman who'd had the integrity to report it, even though it was her ex-husband. Catherine publicly praised my work in a company meeting, though she didn't mention Marcus specifically. We have team members who exemplify the kind of integrity and diligence that makes projects like this successful, she said, looking directly at me. People who do the right thing even when it's difficult. That's the standard we hold ourselves to here. The applause that followed felt surreal. Marcus, meanwhile, was spiralling. I heard through Sophie, who still had occasional tense contact with him, that he was furious, that he'd hired lawyers, that he was insisting he'd done nothing wrong, and that I'd destroyed his reputation out of spite. He's telling everyone you fabricated evidence, Sophie told me one evening. He says you're bitter about the divorce, and this is your revenge. Let him say what he wants, I replied. The evidence speaks for itself, and the more he denies it, the more guilty he looks. His wife is apparently freaking out too, Rebecca. She's worried about the money, about his reputation, about how this affects her. Sophie made a face. I guess it's not so fun being married to him when things aren't perfect anymore. I felt a moment of sympathy for Rebecca. Then I remembered that she'd knowingly started a relationship with a married man, and the sympathy faded. 2 weeks after Marcus's suspension, Catherine called me into her office again. I wanted to update you on the investigation, she said. The legal team has concluded their review. Marcus definitely violated his contractual obligations to the project. He also potentially violated securities laws by misrepresenting material facts to investors. The district attorney's office has been notified. So there could be criminal charges? Possibly. That's not our decision to make. But at minimum, he's facing civil lawsuits from the investors. His firm is going to take a massive financial hit, and his reputation in the industry is, well, let's just say he won't be working on projects like this again. I processed that. A part of me, the part that had loved him once, the part that had shared 20 years of my life with him, felt sad. But a larger part felt that this was simply justice. Actions had consequences. Marcus had made his choices, and now he was facing the results. There's something else, Catherine continued. The partners have been discussing your role going forward. Elena, you've proven yourself to be invaluable to this project. We want to offer you a permanent position, not just as a consultant, but as a full partner in the development group. Equity stake, full benefits, the works. I stared at her. You're offering me a partnership? You've earned it. Your community relations work has been exceptional. You saved this project by catching the fraud. And frankly, we need more people like you, people with integrity and skill in equal measure. She slid a folder across the desk. "Take a look at the offer. Take your time deciding, but I hope you'll say yes." I opened the folder with trembling hands. The salary was more than I'd ever imagined making. The equity stake would make me a genuine stakeholder in future projects. The benefits were comprehensive. It was everything I'd dreamed about when I'd first started in this industry, before I'd given it all up for Marcus. This is incredible," I managed. "You deserve it," Catherine said simply. "So what do you say? Are you in?" I looked at the offer one more time. Then I looked up at Catherine and smiled. "I'm in." The next few months were transformative in ways I couldn't have predicted. I signed the partnership agreement with Meridian Development Group, becoming one of 6 senior partners. My office was upgraded to a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. My name went on the company letterhead. I had a team reporting to me, junior consultants and community relations specialists who looked to me for guidance. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't defined by my relationship to someone else. I wasn't Marcus's wife or Sophie's mother or anyone's anything. I was Elena Martinez, partner at a prestigious development firm, successful in my own right. It felt incredible. The work itself was deeply satisfying. I successfully negotiated agreements with all 3 neighbourhood associations that had opposed the Meridian Tower. We incorporated their feedback into the design: more green space, traffic calming measures, a community centre on the ground floor that would serve local residents. The architects praised my input. The community groups publicly supported the revised project. "You did something I couldn't do," one of the architects told me. "You got people to actually want this building in their neighbourhood. That's rare." Catherine assigned me to 2 additional projects beyond Meridian Tower. Both were complex developments with community opposition. Both needed someone who could build bridges instead of burning them. Within weeks, I was flying to site visits, presenting at city council meetings, negotiating with stakeholders. I was making a real impact, and I loved every second of it. Sophie started at Princeton in September. We'd had a tearful goodbye at the airport, but we video chatted every few days. She was thriving, making friends, loving her classes, joining clubs. She was becoming the person she was always meant to be. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she told me during one of our calls. "Not just for the job stuff, though that's amazing, but for showing me that it's never too late to reclaim your life, that you don't have to accept someone else's definition of who you are." "You taught me that too," I said. "Watching you stand up to your father, refusing to accept his excuses, that gave me courage." "We make a good team," she said with a grin. Meanwhile, Marcus's situation continued to deteriorate. The district attorney did press charges, multiple counts of fraud and securities violations. His firm lost several major clients. There were rumours he was facing bankruptcy. Rebecca apparently filed for separation after learning the extent of their financial problems. I heard all of this second-hand through industry gossip. I had no direct contact with Marcus anymore. He'd tried calling me a few times in the weeks after his suspension, but I never answered. There was nothing left to say. Then, one evening in late October, I got an unexpected visitor. I was working late at the office, a habit I developed, though now it was because I genuinely loved the work, rather than because I was avoiding an empty house. My assistant had gone home hours ago. The whole floor was quiet. There was a knock on my office door. I looked up to see Marcus standing there. He looked terrible, thinner than I'd ever seen him, dark circles under his eyes. Wearing a wrinkled suit that used to be expensive but now just looked tired. "Elena," he said, "can we talk?" Every instinct told me to say no, to have him escorted out by security. But there was something in his expression, not anger this time, but something closer to desperation. that made me pause. "You have 5 minutes," I said. He entered and closed the door, but he didn't sit down. He stood there looking around my office at the diplomas now hanging on the wall, the awards I'd already received from the Development Association, the photos from successful project completions. "Nice office," he said finally. "You didn't come here to discuss my office, Marcus. What do you want?" He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from our marriage. I'm in trouble, Elena, real trouble. The DA is pushing for jail time. My firm is falling apart. I'm losing everything. I know, I've heard. This is all because of you." I felt anger flash through me. "No, this is all because of you. Because you committed fraud. Because you lied to investors and partners. Because you put your own financial interests above the law and basic ethics. I didn't do this to you, Marcus. You did this to yourself." "I made a mistake," he said, and for the first time I heard something like genuine remorse in his voice. "I should have disclosed the updated environmental report. The project was so important, and I knew if the real costs came out, everything would fall apart, and I'd lose my investment, and so you lied," I finished. "You lied, and you hoped no one would catch you. I never thought it would go this far. I thought I could fix it later, adjust the numbers, make it work somehow. You didn't think about anyone but yourself, just like always." He flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? Marcus, you've spent our entire relationship putting yourself first, your career over mine, your happiness over our family's stability, your new wife over your daughter, and when you got caught doing something illegal, your first instinct was to blame me rather than take responsibility." I stood up, facing him across the desk. "So no, I don't feel sorry for you, and no, I'm not going to help you." "I'm not asking you to help me," he said quietly. "I'm asking you to tell the truth." "What truth?" "That you investigated me because of our personal history, that this was motivated by revenge, not professional duty. If you testify to that, if you admit that your motivation was personal, it could create reasonable doubt. It could." "Are you asking me to lie?" I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I'm asking you to tell the whole truth. We have a history, Elena. You can't pretend that didn't factor into your decision to report me." "You're right, we do have a history, but that history didn't factor into my decision at all. I discovered information in the course of doing my job. I reported it because it was the right thing to do. The fact that you happened to be my ex-husband was irrelevant." "No one will believe that. The evidence doesn't care what people believe. You committed fraud. That's not my opinion or my revenge fantasy. That's documented fact." I walked around the desk to face him directly. "Marcus, I spent 20 years making excuses for you, covering for you, putting your needs ahead of mine. I'm done doing that. If you're going to jail, it's because you broke the law. That's on you." He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression. The desperation was still there, but underneath it was something else. Maybe respect. Maybe just the final acknowledgement that he couldn't manipulate me anymore. "I really did love you once," he said softly. "I know," I replied, "but love isn't enough when there's no respect. You never respected me, Marcus. You never saw me as your equal. You saw me as someone whose dreams mattered less than yours, whose career could be sacrificed for yours, whose worth was determined by how well I supported you. That's not, it is. And the saddest part is that you probably still don't see it." I moved toward the door, opening it. "You need to leave now, and Marcus, don't contact me again. If you have something to say, have your lawyer contact mine." He stood there for another moment, then walked to the door. He paused in the doorway, not looking at me. "For what it's worth," he said, "you were always better than me, smarter, more ethical. I just couldn't admit it." Then he left. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. That conversation had taken more out of me than I'd expected, not because I felt sorry for him, I didn't, but because it was the final closing of a chapter, the definitive end of something that had defined most of my adult life. And strangely, I felt lighter. I called Sophie that night and told her about Marcus's visit. "He wanted you to lie for him," she said, incredulous. "After everything? He's desperate. People do desperate things when they're facing consequences. I can't believe him. I mean, I can, but..." She sighed. "Mum, are you okay?" "I'm actually great, sweetheart. Seeing him like that, broken down, facing reality, I realised something. I'm not angry at him anymore. I'm not hurt by him anymore. I've moved on, really, genuinely moved on." "That's huge, Mom." "It is. And you know what else? I'm happy. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I'm genuinely happy with my life. I love my work. I'm proud of what I'm accomplishing. I don't need him or anyone else to validate my worth." "You never did," Sophie said. "You just finally believe it yourself." She was right. That was the real transformation. Not the job or the partnership or the success. It was the internal shift from seeing myself through Marcus's diminished view to recognizing my own value. The trial began in November. I was called to testify, and I told the truth, exactly what I'd found, how I'd found it, why I'd reported it. The defense attorney tried to make it about our personal history, about revenge and bitterness, but the evidence was overwhelming, and my testimony was just one piece of a much larger case. The jury found Marcus guilty on 3 counts of fraud. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay restitution to the investors. His firm was dissolved. His professional licenses were revoked. I felt nothing when I heard the verdict. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not sadness. Just a quiet sense that justice had been served. Sophie flew home for Thanksgiving and we had dinner together, just the 2 of us, like we'd done so many times before. But this time was different. This time we weren't sitting with an empty chair between us, weren't wondering if Marcus would show up, weren't making excuses for his absence. This time we were complete on our own. "You know what I'm grateful for," Sophie said as we cleared the dishes. "That you showed me what it looks like to be strong, to stand up for what's right even when it's hard, to reinvent yourself even when everyone says it's too late." "You showed me those things too," I said. "Watching you handle the divorce with such grace, seeing you refuse to accept your father's excuses, knowing you were strong enough to set boundaries, that taught me I could do the same." We hugged in the kitchen, and I felt a completeness I hadn't known was missing. This was my family now, Sophie and me, and we were enough. December brought new opportunities. Catherine pulled me into her office one morning with news. "We've been approached about a major project in Seattle," she said. "Mixed-use development on the waterfront, complex community dynamics, environmental concerns, political complications, basically everything you're brilliant at handling." "That sounds amazing. It would require relocating for at least a year, maybe longer if you end up leading the project long term." She watched my reaction carefully. "I know Sophie just started college and you're established here now. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to pass." I thought about it. A year ago, 6 months ago even, I would have said no immediately. I would have convinced myself I needed to stay close to Sophie, that I couldn't leave what was familiar, that taking such a big risk was irresponsible. But I wasn't that person anymore. "Can I have a few days to think about it?" "Of course, but Eleanor, you should know that the partners see you as the future of this firm. Whatever you decide, we want you leading major projects. You've proven you have the skill and the integrity to handle them. I called Sophie that evening and told her about the opportunity. Mom, that's incredible. You have to do it. It would mean being across the country from you. Mom, I'm at Princeton. I'm not home anyway. And we have phones, video chat, holidays. You can't pass up an opportunity like this because you're worried about being far from me. You're sure? Mom, her voice was serious now, you spent 20 years putting your life on hold for Dad and for me. You don't have to do that anymore. I'm grown, I'm independent, and I want to see you chase every dream you've ever had. So, yes, I'm sure. Go to Seattle, lead that project, be amazing. I felt tears in my eyes. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best. I accepted the position. By January, I was on a plane to Seattle, ready to start the next chapter. The apartment the firm had secured for me was modern and sleek, with a view of Elliott Bay. My new office was even nicer than the one I'd left behind. The project was challenging and complex and absolutely perfect for me, and I thrived. Within 3 months, I'd built relationships with key community stakeholders. Within 6 months, we'd navigated the most contentious zoning issues. By the 1-year mark, the project was ahead of schedule and under budget, with widespread community support. Catherine flew out for a site visit in March. "You've worked magic here," she said as we toured the construction site. "The Seattle team told me they've never seen someone build consensus this quickly on a project this complicated." "I love this work," I admitted. "Every challenge, every negotiation, every small victory. I wake up excited to come to the office. I can't remember the last time I felt this fulfilled." "Good, because the partners and I have been talking." She smiled. "How do you feel about opening a West Coast division of the firm, with you as managing partner?" I stared at her. "Managing partner? You'd build your own team, take on regional projects, have autonomy over operations. It's a significant promotion, but we all agree you're ready for it. More than ready." "Managing partner, my own division, complete professional autonomy." "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." We shook hands right there on the construction site, hard hats on, surrounded by the literal building blocks of what I was creating. It felt symbolic somehow, building something new from the ground up, laying a foundation for the future. That evening, I video called Sophie to share the news. "Managing partner, Mom, that's insane. I'm so proud of you." "I keep thinking about where I was 2 years ago," I said, "sitting in that audience at your graduation, watching your father's empty chair, feeling so small and defeated. I never imagined I'd be here. But you are here. You did this. You took that pain and that anger, and you transformed it into something incredible." Sophie grinned. "And you know what the best part is? Dad's sitting in prison right now, probably thinking about how he threw away the best thing that ever happened to him. Meanwhile, you're out here being a total boss and living your best life." I laughed. "I try not to think about your father much these days." "Good. He doesn't deserve the mental real estate." She paused. "Mum, can I tell you something?" "Always." "For most of my childhood, I watched you make yourself smaller so Dad could feel bigger. I watched you dim your light so his could shine brighter. And I learned that that's what women do. We shrink ourselves to make space for men." Her voice got emotional. "But then I watched you remember who you were. I watched you take up space unapologetically. I watched you shine so bright that no one could ignore you. And that taught me something completely different. That taught me I never have to shrink for anyone." I was crying now, not bothering to hide it. "Sophie, you're the best thing I've ever done. The best thing we ever did, even if your father couldn't appreciate it." I know. And for what it's worth, I think you're the best thing you've ever done too. The new you. The real you. The you that was always there but finally got the chance to fully exist. After we hung up, I sat by the window in my Seattle apartment, looking out at the city lights reflecting off the water. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the pain, the betrayal, the slow rebuilding of self-worth, the courage to step back into my power. I thought about Marcus and the life we'd shared, about how I'd believed for so long that my story was inextricably tied to his, that I was the supporting character in his narrative. But I'd been wrong. This was my story. It always had been. Marcus was just a chapter, an important one, certainly, one that had taught me valuable lessons about what I would and wouldn't accept, but just a chapter. The real story was about me, about Eleanor Martinez, who'd given up her dreams and then found the strength to reclaim them, who'd been underestimated and dismissed and then proved everyone wrong, who'd faced her ex-husband's fraud and chosen integrity over revenge, who'd built a career from scratch in her 40s and become a managing partner by 45. That was the story worth telling. I pulled out my phone and texted Catherine, "Thank you for believing in me when I'd stopped believing in myself." Her response came immediately. "I always knew who you were. I'm just glad you finally remembered." I smiled and set the phone down. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new opportunities to grow and excel. But tonight I just wanted to sit with this moment, to acknowledge how far I'd come, to feel proud of the woman I'd become, the woman I was always meant to be. Spring turned to summer, and the Seattle office grew from just me to a team of 12 talented professionals. We took on 3 major projects simultaneously: a waterfront development, a historic district revitalization, and a sustainable housing initiative. Each one was complex. Each one was rewarding. Each one was exactly the kind of work I'd dreamed of doing. I hired a brilliant young woman named Maya as my senior associate. She reminded me of myself at that age. Hungry, talented, full of ideas. But, unlike me, she wouldn't have to put those dreams on hold. I made sure of that. "I want you to know something," I told her during one of our weekly one-on-ones. "Your career matters. Your voice matters. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise." "Thank you," she said. "That means a lot, especially coming from you. You're kind of a legend in the industry now, you know." I laughed at that. "A legend? I've only been back in the field for a little over a year. Yeah, but everyone knows the story. How you left the industry to support your husband, how you came back and took down a major fraud case, how you've built this incredible second act." She leaned forward. "You're inspiring to a lot of us, especially women who are told they have to choose between career and family, who are made to feel like taking time off means they're done." "You're never done unless you decide you are," I said. "That's what I learned. It's never too late to reclaim your path." In June, Sophie came to visit for a week. I showed her around Seattle, introduced her to my team, took her to see the project sites. Watching her see my work, see what I'd built, see me in this element, it meant everything. "Mom, this is so cool," she said as we stood on the waterfront development site. "You're literally reshaping a city skyline. We're reshaping it together, the whole team. That's what I love about this work. It's collaborative. Everyone brings their expertise, and together we create something no one could have done alone. That's a much healthier approach than Dad's way of working." "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "Dad always had to be the smartest person in the room. He had to have all the answers, make all the decisions. He couldn't handle anyone threatening his authority." She looked at me. "You're the opposite. You lift people up. You make space for other people's brilliance. That's real leadership. I'd never thought about it that way, but she was right. Marcus had always led through control and dominance. I led through collaboration and empowerment. Maybe that's why my project succeeded while his had collapsed. One evening during her visit, we were having dinner at my apartment when Sophie's phone rang. She looked at the screen and her expression darkened. "It's Dad," she said, "calling from prison. Do you want to answer it?" She hesitated, then declined the call. "I don't have anything to say to him right now. Maybe someday, but not yet." "That's okay, sweetheart. You get to decide when and if you're ready to have that conversation." "He sends me letters," she admitted. "Long letters about how sorry he is, how he made mistakes, how he wants to rebuild our relationship. But they all feel like they're more about making him feel better than actually understanding what he did wrong." "What do you want to do with those letters?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to forgive him, to have a relationship with my father. But a bigger part of me is just tired. Tired of his excuses, tired of giving him chances he wastes, tired of being disappointed." She looked at me. "Does that make me a bad daughter?" "Absolutely not. You're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to protect your peace. Being related to someone doesn't mean they get unlimited access to hurt you." "That's what my therapist says too." "You're seeing a therapist? That's wonderful, Sophie." "Yeah, I started at Princeton. I realized I had a lot to unpack about the divorce, about Dad's behavior, about what I learned from watching your relationship." She smiled slightly. "It's helping. I'm learning that I don't have to repeat those patterns." "I'm so proud of you for doing that work." We spent the rest of her visit doing normal mother-daughter things, shopping, trying new restaurants, going to a Mariners game, staying up too late talking about everything and nothing. When I dropped her off at the airport, we both cried. "I miss you, Mom," she said, "but I love seeing you like this, so happy and confident and successful." "I miss you too, but I love seeing you becoming the incredible woman I always knew you'd be." "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" she asked. "Both of us?" "Better than okay," I promised. "We're going to be extraordinary." July brought news from back home. Marcus had been released early from prison for good behaviour. He'd served 11 months of his 18-month sentence. Catherine called to let me know. "I wanted you to hear it from me rather than through the grapevine," she said. "I don't think he'll contact you, but I wanted you to be aware. Thank you, I appreciate that." "How do you feel about it?" I thought about that question. How did I feel? A year ago, the news of his release would have filled me with anxiety, with fear that he'd try to insert himself back into my life, with anger that he'd gotten off relatively easy. Now, I felt nothing. Not anger, not fear, not satisfaction, just nothing. He was a stranger to me now, someone I used to know in another life. "I feel fine," I said honestly. "He's not my problem anymore. He's just someone who exists in the world, same as millions of other people I'll never think about." "That's healthy," Catherine said. "That's growth." She was right. The fact that Marcus's release didn't impact my emotional state at all, that was the ultimate proof that I'd moved on. I'd built a life that had nothing to do with him, a life he couldn't touch or diminish or interfere with. In August, I got an unexpected message through LinkedIn. It was from Rebecca, Marcus's ex-wife, the woman he'd left me for. "Ms. Martinez," it read, "I know you have no reason to respond to me, and I understand if you delete this message immediately. But I wanted to reach out to say that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the role I played in the pain you experienced. I was young and stupid and believed Marcus when he said his marriage was already over, that you'd both moved on. I know now that was a lie. I also know that he's not the man I thought he was. I left him while he was in prison. I've spent the past year in therapy trying to understand why I made the choices I made. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see now what I couldn't see then. You deserved better than how you were treated. We both did." I read the message 3 times. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her wonder if I'd even seen it. But the bigger part of me, the part that had grown and healed over the past 2 years, felt something like compassion. I wrote back, "Rebecca, thank you for your message. I appreciate the apology and I hope you're finding healing in therapy. You're right that we both deserved better. I've moved on and built a life I love. I hope you're able to do the same. I wish you well." I didn't need to punish her. I didn't need to hold on to anger or resentment. I just needed to keep moving forward. September marked 2 years since I'd started working again. Catherine flew out to Seattle to celebrate. "2 years ago, you were sitting in my office, nervous and uncertain, asking for a chance," she said over dinner. "Now look at you, managing partner, leading a team. About to win the Regional Development Excellence Award. The award isn't confirmed yet." "It's confirmed! I saw the early notification list." She grinned. "You're winning it, Elena, and you deserve it." The award ceremony was in October, back in our original city. I flew home for it, and Sophie flew in from Princeton. It was held at a fancy hotel ballroom with hundreds of industry professionals in attendance. When they called my name, and I walked up to accept the award, I looked out at the audience and saw Catherine cheering, saw Sophie with tears of pride on her face, saw colleagues and collaborators I'd worked with over the past 2 years, all celebrating with me. And in that moment I felt complete. Not because of the award, though that was meaningful, but because of what it represented. I'd rebuilt myself from nothing. I'd proved that starting over wasn't failure, it was courage. I'd shown that you're never too old, never too far behind, never too broken to become who you were meant to be. "I want to thank everyone who believed in me during this journey," I said into the microphone, "especially those who believed in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. This award isn't just mine. It belongs to every woman who's been told her career doesn't matter as much as her husband's, every mother who's been made to feel guilty for having professional ambitions, every person who's had to start over and rebuild from scratch. We're not just survivors. We're triumphant, and we're just getting started." The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, during the reception, dozens of people came up to congratulate me, young women asking for career advice, colleagues proposing collaborations, industry leaders wanting to discuss future projects. And then, at the edge of the crowd, I saw him. Marcus. He looked different than when I'd last seen him in my office 2 years ago. The prison time had changed him. He looked older, more worn. He was wearing a cheap suit, nothing like the designer clothes he used to favour. He was alone. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then he started walking toward me. Sophie, who was standing beside me, tensed. "Do you want me to get security?" "No," I said calmly. "It's okay." Marcus stopped a few feet away from us. Up close, I could see the full extent of the changes. The grey hair, the lines around his eyes, the way he held himself, smaller, less confident than before. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "On the award, you deserve it. Thank you." An awkward silence stretched between us. Sophie glared at him with undisguised hostility. "I've been following your career," Marcus continued. "The Seattle projects, the partnerships. You've done incredible work." "I know." He winced slightly at my tone. "Elena, I wanted to apologize for everything. For how I treated you during our marriage, for leaving the way I did, for trying to blame you for my own mistakes. You were right about all of it. I was selfish. I didn't appreciate what I had. I didn't respect you the way I should have. I looked at him for a long moment. 2 years ago, this apology was all I'd wanted. Validation that I hadn't been crazy, that I hadn't deserved how he'd treated me, that I'd been right all along. Now, it didn't matter. His apology didn't change anything. It didn't erase the past or validate the present. I'd already validated myself. "I appreciate you saying that," I said evenly. "I hope you've learned from your mistakes. I hope you become a better person going forward. But, Marcus, I need you to understand something. I've moved on. Completely. You're part of my past. And that's where you're going to stay." He nodded slowly. "I understand. I wanted you to know that I see it now. How extraordinary you are. How much I lost when I let you go." "You didn't let me go, Marcus. You threw me away. There's a difference." I kept my voice calm, matter of fact. "But you did me a favour, because if you hadn't, I never would have discovered who I really am. I never would have built this life. So, in a strange way, I should thank you." "Sophie," he said, turning to our daughter, "can we talk?" "I don't think so," Sophie said coolly. "I've read your letters. I know you're sorry. But sorry doesn't fix anything, Dad. Sorry doesn't give Mom back the 20 years she spent supporting your career. Sorry doesn't give me back the father I needed when you were too busy with Rebecca. Sorry is just a word you say to make yourself feel better." "Sophie, please." "No, you don't get to do this here, at Mom's moment of triumph. You don't get to make this about you." She stepped closer to him. "Mom has moved on. I'm working on moving on. You should too. And part of moving on means accepting that we don't owe you our time or our forgiveness just because you finally realized what you lost." Marcus looked devastated, but he nodded. "You're right. Both of you. I'll go." He looked at me one last time. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, Elena. I know I have no right to be, but I am." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd and out of our lives. Sophie turned to me, eyes fierce. "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect," I said, and meant it. "Come on, there are people I want to introduce you to." We spent the rest of the evening celebrating. I didn't think about Marcus again that night. I didn't waste energy wondering if his apology was genuine or analysing whether I'd been too harsh or too kind. I simply moved forward, enjoying the moment, the success, the life I'd built. Because that's what healing looks like. Not the absence of wounds, but the ability to not let those wounds define you, not forgetting the past, but refusing to live there. Later that night, back at the hotel, Sophie and I sat on my bed eating overpriced room service and laughing about the evening. "That speech you gave was incredible, Mom," she said. "I cried like 3 times. You crying made me want to cry, but I had to hold it together. I'm just so proud of you, of everything you've accomplished, everything you've overcome." She got serious. "Mom, do you think you'll ever get married again? Date anyone?" I smiled. "Maybe someday. If I meet someone who adds to my life instead of subtracting from it, someone who sees me as an equal partner, who respects my career as much as his own, who makes me better rather than smaller. You deserve that." "Maybe, but you know what? I'm also completely happy on my own. I've learned that I don't need a relationship to be complete. I'm already whole, all by myself. Anything else is just bonus." "That's the most Mom thing you've ever said." We laughed, and in that moment, I felt overwhelming gratitude for Sophie, for my career, for my second chance, for everything I'd learned and become. The past 2 years had been a journey, from devastation to rebuilding, from self-doubt to self-assurance, from being invisible to being undeniable. I'd gone from Marcus's discarded ex-wife to Eleanor Martinez, award-winning managing partner, leader in my field, woman who'd reclaimed her power and transformed her pain into purpose. That journey hadn't been easy, There had been moments of doubt, moments of fear, moments when it would have been easier to stay small and safe. But I'd chosen courage instead. I'd chosen myself, and that choice had changed everything. If you're listening to this story and you see yourself in where I was, diminished, dismissed, told that your dreams don't matter as much as someone else's, I want you to know something. It's not too late. It doesn't matter if you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. It doesn't matter if you've been out of the workforce for 5 years or 20. It doesn't matter if people have convinced you that you're past your prime, that your moment has passed, that you should just accept the life you have. They're wrong. You are not defined by who someone else said you were. You are not limited by the box someone else tried to put you in. You are not required to stay small so that someone else can feel big. The truth is this: you are capable of more than you know. You are stronger than you've been told. You are worthy of respect, success, recognition, and joy, not because someone else grants it to you, but because you claim it for yourself. Starting over isn't failure, it's courage. Reclaiming your dreams isn't selfish, it's necessary. Standing up for yourself isn't mean, it's healthy. And when people show you who they really are, when they show you through their actions that they don't value you, that they don't respect you, that they see you as less than, believe them. Don't make excuses for them. Don't wait for them to change. Don't sacrifice years of your life hoping they'll finally see your worth, see your own worth instead, and then build a life that reflects it. My ex-husband thought leaving me was the end of my story. He thought I'd disappear, become irrelevant, fade into the background of his upgraded life. He was spectacularly wrong. His betrayal wasn't my ending, it was my beginning. The moment he left me at our daughter's graduation, the moment he chose everything else over his family one too many times, that was the moment I started becoming who I was always meant to be. And the best revenge? It wasn't exposing his fraud, though that was justice served. It wasn't seeing him lose everything, though that was consequence earned. The best revenge was building a life so magnificent, so fulfilling, so completely mine, that he became irrelevant. A footnote, a character who appeared in my story for a while and then exited, leaving me free to become the protagonist I was always meant to be. So, to anyone listening who's where I was, heartbroken, lost, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again, here's what I want you to know. You will more than survive this. You will thrive. You will discover strengths you didn't know you had. You will build something beautiful from the ashes of what broke you. You will look back one day and realize that what felt like your ending was actually your beginning. And the people who underestimated you, who dismissed you, who thought you were nothing without them, they'll watch from the sidelines as you soar. That's the real justice. That's the real triumph. That's the real revenge, not destruction, transformation, not bitterness, brilliance, not staying broken, becoming unbreakable. So take that pain, that betrayal, that disappointment, feel it fully, grieve it completely, and then use it as fuel. Let it motivate you, strengthen you, transform you, because you're not just someone's ex-wife or ex-partner or former anything. You're not just the person who got left behind. You're the phoenix who rose from the ashes. You're the comeback story. You're the one who reclaimed her power and rewrote her ending. And trust me, that story is far more interesting than anything that came before.